Now is the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. Congressman, clearly, I mean, the U.S. and Iran seem to have very different views of what was agreed to, important issues like enrichment, control of the state, whether Lebanon was part of the ceasefire. How do you explain what we've seen play out over the last 36 hours?
Well, it's obviously critical that the Trump administration be able to claim some kind of victory here, right? So you either get the kind of non-answers that you just highlighted, or you get a very narrow military tactical answer, which is, look, we sank their Navy. And yeah, we spend about $1 trillion a year on our military. And so we did, in fact, sink their Navy. But look around the world. I mean, let's take a quick walk around the world, right? The Iranian regime is more vicious and younger and more under the control of the Republican Guard than they were a month ago. They have now demonstrated that they can survive the very worst that we can throw at them militarily, and not just survive, but put their hands around the neck of the global economy by stopping the flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. What's happening in Asia? In Asia, countries like the Philippines and Thailand and Malaysia, these countries that are essential to us as we think about China, are actually having to shut down their economies and do 4-day work weeks because they can't get energy. The Gulf states, our allies in the region, Bahrain, UAE, Dubai and stuff, these were countries that wanted to have Georgetown and art museums. And now, of course, they're in the middle of a smoking combat zone. And our European allies are saying, what the hell did you just do? By the way, Russians are selling oil like never before. And what are they doing with that oil money? They're using it against the Ukrainians and the very Ukrainians that we are begging for help to help us with the Iranian drones. I mean, you just, as a strategic matter, this is a complete catastrophe.
You covered the gamut there, and I think it's so important for people to understand the impact globally. You posted that, and I thought this was so direct and so interesting. Iran has not only survived, but achieved strategic wins beyond their wildest dreams. Talk to us specifically about Iran's wins here. Obviously, control of the strait and charging shipping companies, tolls or bribes, whatever you want to call them, is a part of it. Lay the rest of it out for us. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, obviously they've suffered militarily very badly. Their Navy's at the bottom of the ocean. They don't have a lot of missile launchers anymore, although they have enough to raise a lot of hell. They have a lot of drones. But the point is that, they took the very worst that we could give them militarily. But what if you're the regime, you said all I had to do here was survive. And now I promise you that there are going to be phone calls from the White House to Jerusalem to tell the Israeli prime minister to dial it back. So imagine if you're an Israeli. An Israeli is saying, now, wait a minute, they still have the uranium. Maybe they've got even more motivation than they've ever had before to build a nuclear weapon to make sure that this never happens to them again. So if you're an Israeli, what the hell was achieved, right? And imagine if you're an Iranian expat, right, and you left the country in 1979 when the Shah was overthrown, and Donald Trump told you that we were going to support a popular uprising and there was going to be a democracy and this hideous regime was going to be gone. And now the President of the United States is talking about a joint venture, a business deal with the Iranians to take money for boats to go through the Strait of Hormuz. Again, tell me who, other than Donald Trump, thinks that this was in any strategic way a good idea.
Yeah, I don't even know. Maybe he does somewhere in his mind. But yeah, it's a crazy thing to say, the joint venture. I will just echo. I want to ask, I mean, now we're at this point where there are supposed to be negotiations. Who knows what's going to happen in Pakistan? J.D. Vance, the vice president, is supposed to be leading those negotiations. He answered a number of questions today. I just want to play part of what he said about the discrepancy of whether or not Lebanon was part of the ceasefire agreement. Let me just play that because I want to get your thoughts on it.
I think this comes from a legitimate misunderstanding. I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on Iran, and the ceasefire would be focused on America's allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states.
Look, we don't know. It was in the statement from Pakistan. They were the negotiators here. J.D. Vance is going to be, though, the lead negotiator. You have sat at these tables. You've spent a lot of time with people overseas. You're the ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee. What do you make of how he has been answering questions about this war?
Yeah, look, it's pretty clear what happened here, right? After threatening civilizational erasure with people like me worrying about, oh, my God, is he going to use a nuke? What exactly does that mean? Is that really who the United States wants to be? He climbed down, right? He saw oil prices beginning to rise. By the way, beginning to rise, they've almost doubled in the last 40 days, right? He saw that, the world was going to say this is a catastrophe. So he was just looking for a way to climb down. And so he had this Pakistani deal that nobody really understood. By the way, the quote-unquote basis, the 10-point plan that the Iranians offered up, have you taken a look at that? That thing says the United States is going to pay us reparations. They're going to pay us reparations, and we're going to continue to control the Strait of Hormuz. So, look, it's super clear what happened here, which is there was no strategy here. It was just Donald Trump said, oh, my goodness, it is time to walk away from this thing. And by the way, not to pat myself on the back, but, 30 days ago, I said it is a matter of weeks before Donald Trump declares victory, has had enough, realizes that the politics and the gas prices, and those are interrelated things, are so toxic that he just walks away. But as we speak, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Oil prices are rising. So, again, you could spend a lot of time trying to find the master strategy behind all this madness, but there is no master strategy. And J.D. Vance and the president's people are just desperately trying to put lipstick on this pig.
They certainly are. Also, Iran is not going to, the U.S. is not going to allow for them to move forward on enrichment, which they claimed they were. So there's lots of things in that 10-point plan. Congressman Jim Himes, thank you, as always, for joining me. I really appreciate it.